some of the most valuable information I've found comes from the business press, like the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times of London, Business Week, partly because they just trust their audiences, and partly because their audiences own the world and have to have a fairly realistic picture of it. And that's been the focus of my attention, particularly toward the critical end. And the reason for that is that at the critical end, you're dealing with these sort of guardians of orthodoxy, the ones who are setting up the limit, saying you can go this far, but no farther. And if you go a millimeter farther than that, the reaction is hysteria, vituperation, slanders, and so on. So they're actually the critical media, the ones who consider themselves critical dissident, tend to give a good deal of insight into the nature of the doctrinal system. Of course, focusing on that leaves out a lot, and I'll come to that in a moment. The hysteria is interesting, and sometimes even comical. Like one of my favorite front page covers of the journal, actually liked it so much I had it framed and put up in my office, is from the American Prospect. For those of you who don't know it, that's the almost official journal of left liberal American intellectuals, kind of ones around Harvard Square and so on. And they had a wonderful front page cover which was depicting the torment of the embattled liberals who were caught between powerful forces. And on the one side, they have two snarling figures. One of them is Dick Cheney representing the Pentagon. The other's me. I put that on my CD. What I can do is put it on the wall of my office. But it does reflect the paranoia and fear of liberal intellectuals that somebody might go a millimeter beyond what they approve of, because they are the guardians of the party line. And I think that's true, as far as I know, universally. England, France, everywhere. And it's a good way to learn about doctrinal systems. Connected to this, one of the things you learn is that the media, the mainstream media, love to be attacked as being anti-American, probably anti-Canadian, too aggressive, adversarial, going way out of the way to undermine power, helping the enemy, and so on. They love that. They revel in it. What they hate is when you show that, in fact, they're professional, courageous, do the job properly, but they do it within the framework of the founder of modern international relations theory, Hans Morgenthau, once called our conformist subservience to those in power. So yes, they accept that framework, but within it, yeah, there are a lot of courage, professional work, and so on. Ed and I went through one striking example of this. There are many of them in our joint book, Manufacturing Consent. We discussed a 2-volume study by Freedom House. Anyone who's read Orwell knows how to interpret that. Freedom House had a 2-volume study denouncing the press for having lost the Vietnam War because of the way they misreported the Tet Offensive. They reported it from the point of view of the Viet Cong completely, and they lied about it, and they this included, Walter Cronkite, reporters, and everyone else. They were way overboard supporting the Viet Cong. They failed to give due respect to the achievements of the American Army and its victories and so on. The book has 2 volumes. One of them is documentation. That's the second volume. Nobody's ever looked at except us. The first volume is the charges. The charges are derision, hysteria. The press loved it. They loved to be attacked that way. Well, we went through it bothered to go through the second volume of documentation, I found that the first volume was just a tissue of lies. I mean, what they claim in the first volume isn't in the documentation. The relevant documentation isn't there. And what you do find when you look through the documentation is that the press, the reporters, and the editors were honest, courageous, professional, and described what they saw completely within the propaganda frame. It never occurred to them to question. Only question is the kind of question that a reporter for, say, Nazi Germany would have reported, say, on the Eastern Front. We're not doing too well, or something like that. But on the assumption, of course, we've got to win because we're right. Everything we do is right by definition. Well, our commentary, this first appeared in the Journalism Review and sank like a rock. Nobody wanted to hear it. And I don't think there's ever been a reference to it in any of the discussions of our book, not that I've seen. This is just anathema. To be told, for a reporter to be told, you're honest, courageous, professional, but you work within a propaganda system that you can't even see as the ultimate insult. To be a traitor, or overthrowing the government, too aggressive and supporting the enemy, that's great. And that's not unusual. Well, this kind of focus, which is mine at least, it leaves a lot of gaps. For one thing, it leaves out the popular media, ranging from tabloids to sitcoms, which undoubtedly are a substantial part, a huge part of the whole system of propaganda, control attitudes, opinions, and so on. That is just missed if this is what you do. Secondly, another question that's left out of this kind of study is what the impact is of the propaganda. So we were studying mostly the institutional structure of the media system and how that shapes the media product, factors that introduce the media product, and the same in other work we've done. But that leaves open the question, what's the effect on people? That's a much harder question to study than you can. You can compare poll results with big government media campaigns and see interesting correlations and so on. But a large part of the is omitted. And I have some speculations about what would be found if it were seriously studied. These are impressions of speculation. But my strong impression is that what you find is that with respect to interpretation and understanding of, say, world affairs, domestic issues, and so on, with respect to human affairs, I think what you find is that the more educated people are, the more deeply indoctrinated they are. So the effect of the elite media is probably to reinforce the already deeply entrenched indoctrination that's already there, just from the role you play in society, the way you're brought up and trained, and so on. Again, yesterday it happens, one of my many interviews with a Japanese television company doing a documentary. And they wanted to do about Iran, the United States and Iran. And they asked me about MIT's relationship with Iran. It happens to be an interesting relationship. In the mid-1970s, the nuclear engineering department at MIT arranged with the Shah of Iran. The Shah was one of the most brutal, vicious dictators of the modern age, installed by the U.S. British military to overthrew the parliamentary government. So there was an arrangement with MIT, my university, and the Shah would pay MIT some unspecified amount of money, and the nuclear engineering department would admit the nuclear engineers to be trained at MIT in nuclear developments, that means power of the weapons. It was supposed to be secret. It's not the kind of thing you make public. But like most secrets, it leaked pretty quickly. As soon as it leaked, there was a huge student protest. Protests all over the campus, demonstrations. They finally ended up with a referendum, which I think the students voted like 80% to reject it. It was such a big fuss that faculty had to have a meeting about it. Usually nobody goes to faculty meetings because the kids are boring. But when something like this happens, everybody goes. So there was a huge, big auditorium, kind of like this, the whole faculty there. And there was a debate for several hours. And finally, it was approved, almost unanimously. There were maybe half a dozen of us who opposed it. Now, the faculty of today is the students of yesterday. The genes didn't change. In fact, the only thing that changed was their institutional role. And it has an effect.